Hi everyone, I hope everyone can hear me okay, and thank you very much for joining us today. We are really excited to present this webinar as part of a series of webinars organized by Women in Geospatial Plus. Today we'd like to thank Esri UK for sponsoring and allowing us to do this webinar. So this webinar is targeted to students, graduates, and young professionals. We have a troubleshooting a bit, but we have myself and Katie as moderators today. We'll be talking to four amazing young women panelists today: Abbie, Flora, Alicia, and Tanya, who joined us from all over the UK and from Canada. Tanya. And they have a vast range of experience, and they'll be sharing their stories and tips for you. Before we start, I'd like to just let you know that the webinar is going to be recorded. So as registered, you will be receiving a link about the recording, and we'll be posting on social media as well the recording link after this webinar. We also would like to make the session interactive, so we'll be using Slido. So you can use Slido and using the event code #week2020 to answer our polls and put questions to the panel. I'll introduce myself. So I'm Olivia Powell, and I'm one of the moderators. I am a leader of Women in Geospatial UK. I started my career as a GIS officer in the Environment Agency, doing some GIS digitization, and then I decided to switch to become a crime analyst in the police. I have to say that having a panel like this would have been really good for me when I was younger, because in France, GIS was not so popular at the time. It's only when I joined the UK, or came in the UK, that I've discovered it. And then after being a crime analyst for 10 years, I just became the GIS manager for my police service. And I'm passionate about making more use of geospatial in policing. So this is me, and I'll be moderating. But first of all, I'd like to present, if I may, Women in Geospatial Network, as for maybe some of you don't know about it. So Women in Geospatial Plus is a professional network aiming to drive gender equality in the geospatial community. And what we want to do is build an inclusive geospatial community and connect, support, and empower you all to help you become strong leaders and change makers. So this is what we want to achieve. And what we do is we build community by allowing a forum type thing. So if you join us, you get access to a Slack channel, to access like networking and peer reviews, etc., etc. It's like a very kind of supportive community. We organize events like today, webinars, or sometimes, if we could, we'd do face-to-face events, but obviously not at the moment. And we have a career mentorship program. So if you're interested in becoming mentored or becoming a mentor, please get in touch with us, because we have a new mentoring program starting in September. And finally, we advocate for gender equality in the geospatial world. And one of our latest initiatives, for example, is to have a women speakers database, so there could be more representation of women at conferences. So it's a free network, it's global, and we're basically here to support you in becoming a more accomplished professional, geospatial professional. And this is why this webinar is right up our streets, because it's about giving you the tools to progress and advance in your career. So if you'd like to join us, have a look at our website, www.womeningeospatial.org, and you can follow us on social media. We've got a Twitter account, Geospatial Women, and we also have a LinkedIn profile, so you can follow us. And we do think that it's better to be together, so join us. You've got nothing to lose. It's free anyway. So now I'm going to hand over to Katie, who will introduce herself and the panelists. Thank you. Over to you, Katie.
Thanks, Olive. That's a great introduction to what we're going to look at in today's webinar. So as you've already heard, my name is Katie, and I'm just going to take a moment to introduce myself, and then I'm actually going to invite all of our panelists to do the same. So I'm hugely excited to be part of today's event because I work as part of the Esri UK education team. And so my job involves helping to equip people with the skills, the experience and the access to role models that will allow them to pursue their own career in the geospatial sector. So I think that events like this, where we can come together and talk about what that early career experience is like, are really helpful, both to raise awareness of the geospatial sector itself and the vast number of jobs that are part of that. And also it's a signpost, hopefully, for those of you that are on the call today about where to go to help start on your own journey. So I'm going to leave it there about me for the moment, and I'm going to ask Abbie if you'd mind introducing yourself to the webinar today.
Hello there. So my name is Abbie Pearce. I'm a GIS consultant at AECOM. If you're not familiar with AECOM, we're a global consultancy firm. We work with anything from civil infrastructure to environment and sort of help local governments and sort of smaller organisations complete some really interesting projects. So I went to university and I graduated in 2017. I went to the University of the West of England and I did my degree in geography and environmental management. I really enjoyed university. I love GIS, and so I decided, since I'm enjoying this so much, I should give it a trial for a year and see if I'm still enjoying this after I've worked in it for a year. So I was lucky enough to secure a placement year with the United Kingdom Hydrographic Office. This is part of the Ministry of Defence, and their main sort of focus is producing charts of the ocean for the Royal Navy and for mariners. It was a really interesting year, and it gave me so much extra experience that really helped me secure a job in my final year. So whilst at my final year, I applied for lots of graduate schemes, and I was lucky enough to get given a graduate role at AECOM in their GIS team. Since being working at AECOM, I've been involved in loads of large projects such as HS2 and A303, and some of my day-to-day projects involve sort of creating maps and helping to design sort of databases for clients, and it's a very interesting job.
Thanks, Abbie. Flora, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Hiya, I'm Flora Tiley. I am a GIS officer for Sustrans based in Bristol. Sustrans is a charity that we promote active travel, so walking and cycling and such like. And I've been in this role for about 18 months now. Previous to that, I worked in Cambridge for a bit, and then before that, I was at uni in Leeds where I studied geography and straight afterwards did a master's in GIS. So yeah, my work at the moment has been really, really varied. We got ArcGIS about a year ago, so I've spent the last year kind of training sort of the 500 people in Sustrans to use that system with my team. And also during lockdown and COVID, we've produced a couple of maps relating to that, and Esri called me a GIS hero for one of my projects, so yeah.
That's brilliant stuff. Thanks, Flora. Shall we have Alicia next?
Hi everyone, I'm Olivia Vaz and I'm one of the technical leads for the government sector at Esri UK. I've been working for Esri now for 6 years and my career pretty much started through a graduate scheme which I applied for straight out of university. As a technical lead nowadays, I am a trusted advisor to local and central government bodies. I work alongside account managers to advise, help customers with queries and get them using our technology in the right way. It's quite interesting hearing the other panelists and their careers so far. It very much stemmed from going to university, looking at geography, and then specialising in GIS through my master's. But it's really nice to be on board in today's discussion and perhaps explore how we all came into our careers in a variety of different ways in a little bit more detail.
Thanks very much for that. And Tanya, do you want to introduce yourself as well, please?
Hi everyone, this is Tanya. I am a geospatial analyst. I completed my undergraduate in software engineering, and I did work for a multinational company as a software engineer for a few years. But then I really wanted to get into the field of sustainability, environmental science, and disaster management. So I was looking around for any kind of degree that I can combine with my software skills. So GIS worked out a great combination with it. I worked as a GIS analyst with a catastrophe modeling company called RMS for 5 years. Last year, I moved to Canada and I did work as a geospatial analyst for a ride-hailing startup for the mobile GIS app. And currently, I'm back to my learning mode and I'm enrolled in a data science course to enhance my skill set. I'm also a volunteer for Go Geomatics Canada, wherein we write great articles about geomatics in Canada and worldwide.
Thanks so much for that. So that is all of the panelists that are speaking on today's webinar. So I'm going to kick things off. Oh, okay, we've got the Slido slide up. So we're looking at who it is that's joining us on today's webinar. So we're hoping that we're going to be able to cover topics that will be of interest to everybody that's here, whether you're just starting out in your career or whether actually you're still a student and you're looking to break into the geospatial sector. Which kind of leads me on to my first question as those answers are coming in, which is why geospatial? So as we've sort of introduced ourselves there, some of us kind of came directly into the geospatial through graduate schemes, having done kind of quite a bit of GIS and related topics at university. Others of us have kind of come in a little bit sideways, and I'm definitely one of those people. I encountered a bit of geospatial at university, but I wasn't really fully aware of all of the careers that were out there and opportunities. I thought it was just more of a tool for doing research for quite a long time, and I came back into kind of geospatial later on, having worked in some other sort of industries first. So for the panelists, did you always know that you wanted to work in this area, or did you take a sort of different route in? And I'm going to go to Flora first, because I think, Flora, you've got a little bit to say in terms of that career path into geospatial.
Yeah, so I had no idea what it was until about the second year of uni. And it kind of just so happened that my personal tutor at uni was the GIS specialist. And then we were introduced to it in second year, and I was kind of, it just sort of felt like the right thing to do. And it was just something that I seemed to be able to do. And I just was really interested in it. So kind of throughout uni, I tailored all of my assignments to have a big GIS element. And so kind of just pursued it from there. So I didn't necessarily know that it was always the right path, but it was more just kind of tailoring it like within my uni studies and that sort of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of started with that interest in that sort of higher education experience, and picking kind of parts of the course that kind of put you in a position to be able to do the job that you're doing now.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. I don't know, Alicia, do you want to follow up on that as well? Because I think you had sort of more of a sort of straight route in, if that makes sense, sort of being coming in via a grad scheme.
Yeah, that's right. So when I graduated after doing my master's, I knew I wanted to go into the industry, but I wasn't quite sure what role. I didn't have much experience before then. So I applied for the grad scheme at Esri UK, and what was really beneficial was the grad scheme, which lasted 2 years, allowed me to rotate through a number of different departments, so I could start to figure out what roles I liked more than others, or what skill sets that I needed to develop. And I think that really helped me to think about where I see my career, what kind of elements I'd like to have in my role. And I think that's very much helped me into the role and position I'm in today at Esri UK.
Yeah, that ability to kind of see that sort of broad spectrum of different parts of the geospatial industry that are out there. Because for me, that was certainly something that I found really surprising coming to it later on. So my kind of experience, my interest in kind of coming into the industry was probably actually sort of given to me by the Esri conference then in London, where I suddenly met all of these different professionals that were working in completely different industries, as our kind of panelists today are, but all using kind of geospatial technology as part of that role to work sort of for the benefit of other people. And that's kind of been quite a driver for me. I kind of like the fact that a lot of the work that goes on in JS is often about helping others, helping the planet, and kind of making those decisions about a sustainable future. I don't know if anybody else on the panel kind of wants to pick up on that kind of sort of alignment with personal goals in a way that made this sort of sector really appeal to me, or that might just be me.
No, I think definitely, Katie, for me, without being in the industry, sometimes it's hard to see. But I think what's great about geospatial is that it touches so many industries, like you name it, whether it's commercial, charities, all the way through to utilities. Like there's some element of geospatial in there. And I think what kind of drives me is that what you're doing is actually making a difference and helping advise and make that change so that they can make better and more informed decisions. So definitely, I think there's a sense of achievement that you're helping towards a greater good in that role.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else want to pick up on that, or we can move?
Yeah, I was just going to say, really well said, Alicia. That's kind of sums it up really, really well. And I think even, for example, in the work that I do now, we work with a lot of local authorities who all have a GIS base. I'm going out with the ecologist tomorrow to work on some apps that I've developed. And that's just like, for me in the charity sector, and I think even just between us as panelists, we're all doing completely different work every single day, but it still falls within the same bracket. So that's what's really exciting about it. And there's kind of something for everyone as well.
Yeah, and I think once you've got a few of those kind of skills, they're really transferable across those kind of different sectors of the geospatial industry itself. Okay, so I'm going to kind of sort of move this into the second sort of question that I've got here. So once we've sort of decided that a geospatial career is for us, once we've identified that part of the industry that we're really fascinated with, how do we actually go about landing a job? So a couple of you have touched on aspects of this already, you know, how you really made yourself a standout applicant, but I just want to dig into that in a little bit more detail. So Abbie, if it's okay, I'm going to come to you first on that one, because you've already sort of mentioned some of the work that you did at university to help prepare yourself for your role sort of in geospatial.
Yeah, sure. So as I've mentioned previously, I was lucky enough to take part in a placement year at the UKHO. This obviously made such a difference to my CV when it came to applying for jobs, as I was able to sort of showcase to employers that I already had a year's worth of experience, that I suppose it's proven that I've done a year in it and that I'm potentially not going to call it quits after a little while. But I'm very understanding that not everybody gets a chance to do that. They are highly competitive to get a hold of. But there's plenty of other stuff you can do, which I myself got involved in it at university. So some of the things that I got involved in during my second year of university, at sort of the point where I decided, you know, I really quite like GIS. I talked to my lecturers, my GIS lecturers, and they allowed me to do some sort of part-time teaching in the first year sessions. So we would have practical sessions where all the first years would sit there for 3 hours and look helpless and get worried when they've lost everything. And I would basically come along, just help them sort of troubleshoot for all the sort of common issues they have. And that was something that looked really, really good on my CV, and you gain a lot of experience and confidence by helping people and doing a lot of troubleshooting. I think the main part of it is just ask your lecturers what you can do to help out and what sort of additional things you can do. I think it's also worth saying that if you have some spare time, there's a lot of charities online that you can look at, things like missingmaps.org, which always want some GIS support for free in digitization, and that can always look really good in your CV if you are looking for any jobs.
Yeah, so kind of making the most of those sort of internship opportunities that are available, but also not being afraid to pursue those kind of extracurricular things, you know, that might seem sort of quite simple and straightforward, but they give you that hands-on experience in kind of using different aspects of the software and kind of solving problems with that geospatial mindset, to really give you that hands-on experience. I don't know, Flora, do you want to pick up on that a bit more? Because I think you've also done sort of some extracurricular work kind of in preparation for working in the geospatial sector.
Yeah, sure. So, Abbie, obviously you managed to gain quite a lot of experience whilst at uni. My uni career was more focused on just sort of having a good time whilst also doing my degrees. And then from that, I went into a very entry-level GIS job that was just a fixed-term contract. Quite soon after starting the job, I realised it wasn't quite my cup of tea. So this was when I was based in Cambridge. So I kind of made the most of the amazing facilities that are available in Cambridge. And I got involved with the Cambridge Conservation Forum, and within that they have a GIS group. So I worked with Tom Starnes, who works for the RSPB, and we organise mapathons, which are the missing maps that Abbie just mentioned. You basically have an evening where you teach everyone how to use the software, and everyone maps a part of the world. You have a certain project. So lots of stuff like that, and just trying to get my name out as much as possible. I also did the Code First Girls coding courses, which I really, really recommend if you just want to have a quick introduction to code. They do 8-week courses based in London if you are not a student, and then I think they're based in quite a few universities as well for students as well. So I did 2 courses. One was HTML and CSS, so that's like basic web design, and then I also did a Python course as well, and I use Python quite a lot now in my role, so that was like really, really valuable, and something that my manager to this day says that really stood out on my application when I applied for this current job. So yeah, just really making the most of what is around you and not getting bogged down if you're not enjoying your job or whatever. There's always something else you can be doing that will just sort you out.
Yeah, can I just add a little bit more on that kind of connection there with kind of coding and GIS in a way? Because I think not everybody is always aware that there is that kind of fit with the computer science element as well as the geography of things. So it's sort of, what sort of things are you using that for in your role that kind of made you stand out in that way to your boss?
So I made the things that my manager was interested in is I made a website for an old uni lecturer of mine for a book release that he was having, and then currently I'm using Python to back up data from ArcGIS online. So it can just, again, even within that sphere, it's so varied. And as you say, there's a lot of computer science within GIS, but also a thing that I really love about GIS is that it's creative too. So it's kind of, it's art, it's science, it's sort of everything all in one, which is,
yeah, wherever your interests lie, you kind of get to fulfill them in a way. I think that's really interesting as well that you've just picked up on there, that kind of the fact you built that website for, was it your lecturer that you said? You know, that was kind of
an old uni lecturer.
Yeah, it was kind of part of that collateral to help you in terms of getting that next job. I think something that I often overlooked when I was a younger person and earlier in my career particularly is you know, those triumphs that you have when you're at uni, these projects that you make, these kind of outputs that you create. Actually, if you can keep hold of them and kind of keep them open to people, they can be really useful objects for them to see what you can already do. And they're never sort of wasted time in a way, that actually you can come back to them and use them as a bit of a showcase for some of your skills and also some of that effort that you've made sort of extracurricularly too. So we've talked quite a bit about kind of formal qualifications that most of us have kind of come in from a university background into geospatial, and sort of about extracurricular work and sort of additional experience through volunteering and things like that. But I did want to just touch on if there's any sort of other skills that we think are particularly useful to breaking into this career sector. So Tanya, I don't know if you want to pick up on this, just in terms of things like resilience and kind of openness to sort of different opportunities, because I know sort of from your career you've kind of sort of really moved through different sectors, kind of out of software and into geospatial more formally. So I don't know if you just want to talk about those other skills that you think might be valuable for getting the job in geospatial.
Oh, absolutely. So there are a lot of other skills. I think one of them that stands out is being aware. GIS is a field which is constantly evolving. Like things that you did last 2 years, they will constantly be changing over the next coming years. So you always need to be very prepared that there will be modifications to the kind of work you do. So you need to continuously keep on imbibing new skills. Other skills that I would talk about is resilience and openness to move about and new places. So there are a lot of opportunities that come around, but the places are usually remote. So obviously the places which have not been mapped as much, there are jobs in the field. So just kind of having this mindset that you are ready to move to new places and even remote places for good field work and great opportunities will always improve your experience with GIS. Like you'll have the first-hand experience in the field as well, and also know that what kind of improvements need to be made in such areas. Also, there are a lot of volunteering opportunities. So in case you are stuck in a job that you do not like, but you would want to enhance more of your skill set, there's always so much to do online. Like there's so many humanitarian open street projects that need your help. So it's just being about just the mindset of being more open and aware of what else you could contribute to and how well you can adapt to different places.
Yeah, I think it's really worth reiterating that point about these kind of online learning experiences. I know sort of Esri's Learn site at the moment is open so that any professional that's looking to upskill themselves can kind of have access to training there, and that's all as part of their kind of COVID response. And there's lots of other opportunities out there, some of which we already mentioned, to actually go and build that skill set. So I would definitely flag that up to kind of everyone listening, that even if you're not in a formal education setting right now, or if actually there's not that much of a GIS component on your particular geography course or kind of whatever it is you're studying, there are still other options out there. And if you sort of have a quick Google, or other search engines are available, you can often find even things where you can kind of gain sort of formal qualifications in different aspects of different platforms. So I think we're just going to come back to the Slido for a moment now, and we're just sort of asking the people that are here on the webinar what they're finding hardest when it comes to applying for jobs. And it looks like building that portfolio to demonstrate experience is actually kind of one of the toughest things that people are experiencing at the moment. So hopefully some of the ideas from the panelists here have actually helped with some of that. This idea, you know, that it can be simple things like building a website for a lecturer, kind of attending a code camp and producing some sort of material out of that, that can actually be really useful when it comes to that CV and that interview situation, to give you that edge when it comes to applications.
Also, just a funny little point that someone once told me as well is I always used to put a little like logo at the top of my cover letter, like a sort of like a GIS related logo or something similar, just so if people have got a pile of cover letters and they'll just see this one that stands out, and they might, it might not work, it might, but I used to do it, and that was just a good little tip that someone once gave me, so it might be worth trying that as well.
Yeah, no, I really like that. Another one that I've actually seen, and this is kind of often with slightly younger students, so people that are generally applying to universities as part of their kind of UCAS statement. I've seen students that have produced story maps that are almost like their GeoCV. Sorry, say again?
I did one of those as well, yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that, Flora, given that you've got that personal experience of it?
It was just in my final year at uni, I just thought, because a friend of mine had done a job application and then recorded his cover letter onto a record or something, and I was like, that's cool, but not very relevant to what I do. So yeah, I made my CV into a story map. So all of my experiences I pinpointed around the globe, and then added pictures and a little blurb about each one. So that was, yeah, just a nice little dynamic touch as well.
Yeah, I think that sort of touches actually a little bit on the sort of second biggest thing that's coming out from the Slido here, this knowing what skills to develop, whether it's your soft skills versus your technical skills. And I think things like those story map CVs actually really demonstrate that you're competent at weaving both of those together, that actually you can use the technical aspects of software really cleverly to tell a creative story. You know, even if it's about something quite personal, something that might seem quite simple, For a lot of people out there, that doesn't look simple, and it doesn't look, not uncomplicated. It actually looks really impressive because it's you demonstrating, like, I've got both the technical skills and I've got this ability to turn it to sort of whatever creative project you might be needing me to engage my brain for. So I think that's sort of another aspect to touch on. And this third one here about building confidence and feeling insecure. So I think we're going to touch on that a lot more in the next section. So it's interesting that that's come out as something that quite a few of us potentially worry about or struggle with as we're looking to build our sort of early career. Just before we move on then, I'm just wondering if, given the situation that we're in right now, because this is a very unusual sort of set of circumstances for people to be starting a career, given that we're in the middle of a global pandemic, are there any tips that we've got sort of for applicants right now in terms of kicking off their career? Or is it sort of mostly just what we've said already, but, to the max? Don't know if anybody else wants to jump in on that.
I could take that.
Go for it, Tanya.
So I've been studying about these things recently, and been reading a lot of articles about how to approach a job during the global pandemic. So first thing that that has happened is there are not as many postings because companies are trying to cut down costs by advertising. They have to pay for such stuff, but that does not mean that there are no jobs. So it's just a different way. There's just a little tweak to your job searching strategy. So you need to find the hidden jobs, right? So kind of professionally networking with people that work in the GIS field, trying to understand what kind of companies, what kind of industries they work for, and trying to build a professional network. So at this time, because maybe it's a little restriction, you cannot move out and meet as much people through meetups and stuff. But LinkedIn is always there. Try using it to its fullest. I still attend sessions and webinars on how to improvise your LinkedIn profile. And trust me, every time I attend one, I get to know another good point that we haven't or I haven't utilized as yet. So there's a background image that you could, kind of showcase a little bit of your project or skills about. There's a lot of space to put in your articles. There's a lot of space to put in your posts. So so point one would be always having your LinkedIn profile very active and updated. Secondly, I see that people find it hard to build a portfolio, but trust me, this is one thing that will make you stand out in the current time. Just because you cannot directly go and meet people and present your project that you've been working on, building a portfolio and sending it over in a website or story maps, or there are plenty of other websites too. There are a lot of courses that tell you how to make your portfolio. So even if you attend a generic portfolio making class and try to embed your GIS aspect into it, it works but absolutely fine. Also, I would say is to always have your elevator pitch ready. You might just be professionally or casually networking with somebody over a web call, but if you have your presentation ready and you know what you can do for their company or what great things you bring to the table, it will always keep you at par if they're hiring for applicants or even thinking of hiring at a later time. And lastly, I would say maybe if this is a difficult time and it's tough to get a job right now, but you could utilize this time for learning something or earning a certification. So the second thing that I wanted to touch upon is when you feel difficult to know what kind of skills to develop, try to see the available job posting, check the requirements in the job description and see which ones you do not currently have, and try keeping a count of these things. So once, suppose you see Python repeating always in all of the job descriptions, so note that down, that this occurred like twice and I do not have it yet. So maybe it's time that I start working on a particular skill. Well, other than that, it's hard to keep positive, but I think that's the only thing that will help us drive through this global pandemic. So be positive and just keep yourself updated.
That's an amazing, a wealth of kind of information there that I think is super helpful. I think my LinkedIn profile is definitely something that I know I need to work on, because that's the kind of social media network that I came to most recently. Now, your mileage may vary on this slightly, but for me, I've also found Twitter has been really, really helpful for that professional network building that Tanya was really mentioning there, especially at the moment where we can't get out face to face in networking sessions, as she said. It's actually just been really helpful for building connections with people, because there are a lot of people that do use it professionally. It's what part of how they make their portfolio available. Sometimes they share cool stuff, and often, you know, I know that kind of Esri will often, and through that you kind of get in little Twitter conversations, make connections with people, end up learning about other aspects of technology or career sort of professional development opportunities, or just people out there that are useful to know because they're in that sort of sphere that you want to move into. I think it can, you know, social media can sometimes be toxic for us, but you can kind of be mostly a lurker on there and just post the odd professional thing and actually get quite a lot of benefit from it, I think, as well. And I love the point as well, Tanya, about that, having your elevator pitch ready. I think sometimes, particularly if you are early in your career, for me, certainly I wasn't always confident to kind of just immediately start talking about myself and my ideas around kind of what I wanted to do for things. But it is so important, and generally people are really interested in what you have to say.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else has got any... Sorry, go ahead, Tanya.
I was just about to say that we do think that sending out, you know, requests over LinkedIn, the other person might not be very receptive to that. But then if you always put in a nice, polite note, and you know why you are networking and you have a reason, or maybe research a little bit about that person, the work that person does, or the kind of industry he or she is in, it always helps, like making a little connect, though it's all digital, but then the person will surely accept and be helpful to you.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in on that. If not, then we can move on to this next section, because I think it's important that we... Abbie, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, just jumping in with the building confidence. I think one thing that I always tried to do when I was at university was just take every opportunity. And I know we get told that a lot, but I made it my mission to, perhaps like Flora said, she more enjoyed her time at uni. I was very much on a mission to try and fill my CV as much as possible, to talk to as many people as possible. So I, especially when we would have talks or sort of webinars like this, I would always make an effort to dial in, because that way you'll meet more people. Like many of these people on this call, I think I've connected with you all now on LinkedIn, and I'm sure we'll stay in each other's network. It's ways like that that you can add to your network on LinkedIn and sort of build your confidence by talking to other people. I think one of the main things as well, when you go to things like the Esri conference, we're all in the same situation where we're probably a bit nervous to go up and talk to each other. So one thing I definitely do to try and sort of build my confidence is just go up, strike up a conversation with someone. They'll usually have a lanyard on that says what their name is, where they work, and just ask them a question. And just, you know, if you try to start with some sort of natural sounding questions, it could be really easy to make some connections and do a bit of networking and build that confidence up, which might hopefully help you secure a job somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this leads us really nicely into the next sort of set of questions that I've got. And it's sort of, you know, what happens next? You know, once you've got a job, what then? And particularly this issue of imposter syndrome. And I think that ties into this idea that some of us have got about lacking confidence. So for all the panel here, have we ever experienced imposter syndrome early in our careers? And how did we overcome it? Or if we've never experienced it, how did we avoid it? I don't know, we don't hear from Alicia in a while. I don't know if you want to jump in first on this?
Yeah, definitely. So I think for me, going straight from university into a job, you set your own expectations quite high on yourself. And I know for me, I felt like I needed to know all the answers if someone asked me a question. But I think actually, I started the graduate scheme with 3 other graduates at the same time. I think sometimes you just got to take a step back and realise that you've got to run your own race sometimes. You know, skills that you might have, others might not, and skills that others have, you might not. So, you know, you can't know everything. I think you just got to take it as it comes, but just kind of focus on what skills you have, and perhaps be able to highlight skills that you want to develop. I think one thing you can do to try and overcome that stage is to ask questions. Sometimes it can be perceived as a weakness, but actually 6 years down the line and seeing new people come on board at Esri, it's not. I think if you ask questions and you ask for help, I think that's a really good skill to have. So don't be afraid to, you know, ask your colleagues for help or guidance. And if there is a gap where you want to develop your skills further, identify it and think of new ways to develop those skills, whether it's training or reading up on the topic. I think that in itself is a really handy set of skills to have, and to try and overcome some of those issues.
I really, really agree with that. And I would absolutely say that was my biggest issue, especially as I sort of hadn't started out in geospatial to begin with. I had huge imposter syndrome, and I was really scared about people asking me a question that I didn't know the answer to. And that is, yeah, it's kind of crazy. You can never have encyclopedic knowledge, especially when the sector is as broad as geospatial is. And everything that you've just said there about kind of not feeling inhibited about asking questions, and actually just being honest about those areas where you know you need to do some development work, and then going for that, I think is really, really helpful. And honestly, it is okay. I cannot reiterate enough, it is okay to ask questions, and nobody knows everything, and it's not kind of revealing anything about you and undermining you to be upfront and honest about that, I think, for sure. Flora, do you want to jump in as well?
Yeah, so I've been really lucky in that I've not felt it in like imposter syndrome in a big way, because the roles that I've had, I've always joined with a team of new starters. So we've always had like a really good kind of training package, and obviously you're all kind of starting at the same point in that company. But particularly with my current role, my team, we're all at very, very different stages in our career, and we all come from very, very different places. And so you start and you're sussing each other out and how each other works, but actually we now work as a really good team because we all have different skills to help each other out. I think also the imposter syndrome often comes with a sort of, you don't think you're good enough, blah, 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 blah. But if you've got to that point, you've gone through a rigorous application, interview, potentially second interview, maybe even more process. So it's the employer who believes in you, and you need to make sure that you echo that in yourself, because they've made the decision, they want you. So yeah, just give it your all.
Yeah, and again, I really agree with that, especially the point, you know, about kind of all those different skills that are in your team that you're working in at the moment, and the fact that you kind of all came in and were sort of all new. I think that's really been my experience of working in this sector as well, that you will meet people who've got a really different range of backgrounds. Just all of us on the call today have all kind of come in different routes and work in different sectors. And it's about kind of bouncing off one another, and, you know, where you'll have knowledge, you'll be making up sort of where somebody else doesn't know so much, and vice versa. And also this idea of people at different career stages. Certainly for me, one of the most beneficial things was actually recognizing that mentorship was going to be important, that it wasn't all about me trying to do it all by myself, you know, to prove something, that was actually going to be really important for me starting to develop myself. I don't know if anyone else has had that experience as well and wants to talk on it some more.
Well, I kind of had the imposter feeling while I was at university, because this grad school was completely like an age experience, no bar kind of a place. Like, people were already in mid of their careers and just coming there to explore what additional GIS skills would help them do in their already existing careers. Like, we had people in the army, we had forestry people, we had urban planners, and I was this software graduate who was trying to see where I will fit in after completing the degree. So yes, I did had a feeling of it quite early in my career. But then when I landed a role with RMS, it was also full of very experienced people, mostly PhDs. But then it was also nice to learn from them that they're very open to learning from new talent, like they're open to ideas. So the best thing you could do when you feel this is, of course, what you both discussed, is ask questions. As they say that the dumbest question is the one which is not asked, right? So you should never hold back yourself from asking any question. Ask around, and before you know it, you will always come up with new ideas, because somebody has been doing that work for so long, and you will come up with this new skill set that you recently graduated with, and you will be able to contribute that and towards the organization. So never hold yourself back and never lose your confidence.
Yeah, and again, another really sort of interesting point I think is worth putting out there. This idea that, you know, if you're talking to people who are more experienced in their career, that they're only giving you something. And that is very, very rarely true. As Tanya's just said there, you are bringing new skills and experiences into that workforce. You will always have something to contribute, and you might not particularly value it because it seems very straightforward to you. But even for people that are well advanced in their careers, quite often you will have something really valuable for them to hear as well. So any sort of mentoring relationships that you develop, they will be a two-way street. It isn't sort of you just taking help from somebody else. It becomes that kind of dialogue, that conversation, and you both get to kind of grow and change as a function of that relationship, I think. So yeah, don't ever be put off those conversations. Do any of the other panelists want to jump in on this sort of issue around imposter syndrome, confidence and mentorship?
So I'll jump in. So I did get imposter syndrome. I wouldn't say I got it too badly, but I definitely experienced it occasionally. I think for me, working in sort of quite a large company, we have a team of about 35 people. So we've got very wide range of skills and experience. We've got quite a few people who are graduates, while we have people who've been working in GIS for 20, 30 years. So again, you can learn so much from everybody. But you can definitely get the imposter syndrome, especially when you all meet up together. And so we obviously do these team away days quite often. And whilst it is amazing to sit there and listen to all the great things that other people in the team are doing and are teaching you, I still find the little niggling doubt in the back of your head of, oh God, why have I been hired to work here when all these people are so amazing at doing their job? And I think, like the other panelists have said, is you just have to realise that you've been hired for this job, and you need to realise your worth and that you deserve to be here as much as anyone else. And I know it is easier said than done, but it comes with time, sort of realising that you can do your job role and you don't need to feel like an imposter in it.
I think it's so true, because you never experience yourself as other people do. You know, you always think, oh, well, you know, it's just straightforward, the stuff that I know. And you never are necessarily aware of how impressive you might seem to other people with stuff that you think is just pretty, you know, straightforward, that's just come out of your brain. And that is always worth bearing in mind, for sure. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about kind of issues of confidence and kind of starting to feel more sort of at home in our teams. I wanted to just come on to a sort of a slightly side issue here about sort of once you've got that job. And it's for those of us that have maybe had to move away, particularly maybe even move from our home countries in order to find jobs. Those of us that have got experience of that, what do we think are the positives, but also potentially any barriers or pitfalls? How did we overcome those? So Tanya, I think I'm going to come to you with that one, if that's okay, because I know that you've got some experience of this.
About moving a lot for work.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I did. So I did move a lot within India. Like I worked for some time in the north of India and then moved to the south of India, which in itself is a huge cultural difference. And then I did my degree in Netherlands, moved back to India for work, and last year moved to Canada. So what I can say is it is difficult. It is not easy. Like you will take time to adjust, and there are different ways where you get to know or find out more about the culture. So you have to first research like what will be the best place to kind of interact with people, and you will have a friendly set of people around you who will be happy to let you know about things about that stand out in that particular culture. So well, in Canada it has been professional meetups. So these events are coordinated within different interest groups. Like I've been attending geomatics meetups. So it helps me build a friendly professional network, because we all meet in a casual setting, but also know about the culture by the way they talk, by the kind of things they share, things they like talking about, while also building a professional understanding and a network. So meetups is one thing, and I would say there are so many videos and articles about different countries when you move around. So do your bit of research, try to know things that you should not do, and try to be involved in the community. This really helps you get started with it. But in the long run, it has always helped me to move around places. It's always helped me be more resilient. Like I know I can go to a new place and my adjustment time will be decreasing every time. Like the first time I moved out of my house, it took me 3 months maybe to settle down and make sense of things. But this time, because I've done a complete uh, continent moving, so I know that next time I move to a new place, I will adjust much quickly, because now I know what it takes to kind of know people around and stuff. So it is difficult, but it will always help you in the long run. But you don't have to kind of push yourself to do it if you do not feel like. There are ways to know different cultures. You could be working for a company which has clients in various countries and employees in different countries. So you could interact with them, know a bit about cultures, and then maybe make up your mind that you want to stay where you are, or you want to move around and look for new places. I am particularly fond of traveling, so it kind of combines with my I kind of travel, I enjoy new places, and I move around for work. So that's how it is.
Thank you so much. There's so much that's useful in there. And I really liked this kind of point about how when you do start kind of doing that, when you start to learn how to operate in a new place, every subsequent move, it gets that little bit easier, because you really develop that skill of kind of embedding yourself in a new culture.
Yeah.
I think on the flip side of that, I was just wondering as well, particularly at the moment where a lot of us have been kind of working remotely, do we think there's sort of aspects of that are in the GIS industry as well? So if we're not looking to move and actually we want to kind of have that sort of remote work experience, do we sort of find that that's available in the sector too?
I kind of maybe because I worked in the combination of IT and GIS kind of an industry, it did not affect me that much, because work from home was already a common thing to do. But yes, working remotely while you do GIS, which is a thing that you want constantly being reviewed. Like you want to, suppose you're making a map, you want to send it to somebody and see how it looks and what are the corrections. It is there, but then if you rely and you upgrade yourself to the latest option, suppose you're using ArcGIS Online and you're in an enterprise server, anybody can come and make review and make changes to it. So I think there are limitations, but there are more number of ways to work around them.
I think for me, working from home, doing GIS has been really, really easy. We're really lucky that our software all works on our computers, and we've got remote servers and stuff that store a lot of our data. So yeah, my manager literally said to me the other day, he was like, you don't have to work from home. You could work from anywhere in the world as long as you do the hours and check in and every now and again, then it's fine. So I think that is a big benefit to working in GIS, is that it is essentially designed to be remote and global. So yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Sort of my role within Esri has always been as a home worker essentially, which was something that I really wanted to try and pursue, and I've really enjoyed having that sort of aspect of working life that I've been able to develop, which now a lot more of us have as a function of kind of the circumstances we found ourselves in with the pandemic. But yeah, I definitely agree. I think there's a lot of opportunity if that is the direction that you want to take your career in, to pursue that in the GIS sector too. So hopefully on screen, I just wanted to sort of take a little break from us talking here to actually have a look at some of the questions that have been coming in from the people that are listening in. There's a few more sort of reflections on experience that our panelists are going to come back to in the last section, but I just wanted to have a look at some of these questions and get the panelists' kind of view on what we've got coming in from the audience. So the first question that I can see is, can you recommend any free online resources that might help you in your GIS experience and skill set? I'm going to jump straight in just because this is something that my job is quite involved in, and I'm going to flag up again Learn ArcGIS. I think that's potentially really useful for people that are looking to develop professional skills at the moment. There's a lot of different aspects of the ArcGIS platform that you can go and get some really good training on through there. For sure, that is just free and online for everybody to access. But if other people want to drop in as well, any sort of really good online resources they've come across?
More than online resources, subscriptions to some of the GIS, geospatial, and geomatic kind of online subscriptions have really helped me, because they let you know what events, what online webinars are taking place, and you can just register yourself through them. Other than that, Esri's online course materials have always come up very helpful.
Awesome stuff.
Next there's also, oh sorry, there's
no,
also a learning portal called GIS 24/7, and I think they have some free training on there as well.
Awesome stuff. So I think, yeah, have a Google, and there's definitely sort of some portals out there where you can get free online stuff right now. Next question, does anyone even use R? Academic is very R heavy, but is this even a useful skill if I want to apply for industry jobs? What are our thoughts on R?
Used R. I did it at uni, and my job now is part of a wider research unit, and they all use R. And I wish I had kept it up so that I can still remember it. But yeah, it really depends on what kind of role you go into. I think they use it a lot for kind of ecology stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd sort of second that in terms of it depends on what job you're interested in, and we've already heard from the panel a couple of times. It's worth kind of looking at some of the job adverts that are out there, because they will often be quite specific. If there is something that you really need to know for that job, they will list it as part of that job advert. So if the sector that you're particularly interested in is coming up with R a lot, then yep, it's going to be a worthwhile one for you to keep pursuing, I'd say. But in other parts of geospatial, it may not be as common. It's going to probably be quite sector dependent, would be my take on that.
Absolutely. I would say that sectors that rely heavily on data modeling, data mining, data analysis, these kind of jobs, be it environmental data, or I worked for a catastrophe modeling company, and they did use R a lot. So just be aware of what kind of industry you're heading to, but having a skill as R and Python will always help you no matter what industry you go into.
Mm-hmm. And then following on from that, we've got, how much coding experience do you need for a GIS job? And my initial answer to this would be, it depends on the job. Some of them, yep, you're going to be required to have some coding experience, and some of them you are not going to need any at all. So my advice would be kind of the same there. It's going and looking at those job descriptions and seeing what they're asking for in that particular part of the GIS world that you're interested in would be my take. But if others have got other opinions, then please do let us know.
I'm happy to jump in quickly here. Happy to admit I have absolutely no coding experience. It's always one of those things that I wanted to do at uni. I got as far as buying some books on it, and it's been on my to-do list for about 4 years, and I've never done it. I know it is useful for a lot of jobs, but it is not essential that you need it. Like you said, it's always good to look at the job spec and see what they say, but I don't think it's a deal breaker if you don't have it. I say it's good to have, but don't worry if you don't. Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. Don't let it put you off, because a lot of jobs you won't need coding experience for. And that may be something that you do get to develop as part of your skill set once you're kind of on board a company. I don't know if any of us have personally had experience of that. So I know at Esri, for example, it is one of the areas where if you want to develop yourself in sort of coding, you're offered opportunity to be able to do that. Okay, so having a look at the next question. Does it matter what JS software you have experience in? Is it better to have ArcGIS or QGIS? Should we aim to have experience on both? Again, I'm happy to jump in with kind of my view on this, but if the panel wants to answer first.
I can go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would say, generally speaking, it doesn't. When I came in from university, I had experience in both. I think it goes back a stage. So I think if you can understand the benefits, then that's really useful. But I think just knowing what's out there and the different software providers is a good thing. But I don't think it necessarily matters as long as you know what the benefits of those tools are. I think that's more powerful.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And again, it's almost a bit of a boring answer, but it's another one where if you look at job descriptions, they'll be quite straightforward a lot of the time if they want you to have expertise in a particular platform, or indeed if they want you to have experience in both. So again, it's going to be a kind of a question of looking at those job specs and seeing what's kind of relevant for the jobs that you want to apply for, I would say.
Yeah, I also think, yeah, as Alicia said, like definitely knowing the benefits of each, but also if you've got loads of experience in one, you'll probably very quickly pick up the other.
Definitely.
Yeah, and like my previous job always was QGIS, and my current role, when I started, we had MapInfo, which is like an absolute dinosaur, and now we have ArcGIS. So it's kind of the transferable skills between the systems because they're not wildly different. So.
Yeah, I would also like to add up on this. It doesn't matter what particular GIS software you have experience in, as long as you understand what and how the spatial operations work. I can combine this with the other question too, whether you need coding experience or not, and this works for both of them. Like when you run a tool, when you run a spatial operation, just try to go to its details and try to understand how is it working. Once you know the exact logic that goes behind it, later, even if you want to code, you will be able to do that. And even if you want to run the same thing in another software, you will be able to do that. So always be aware of how a particular operation or tool is working in the background. It really helps. So it does not matter what software you work in.
Thank you. So we've got a, how do I land an internship in JS fields? Hopefully we've kind of given a bit of an answer to a lot of this already in terms of the different extracurricular activities that we've talked about and the ways that we've built our CVs kind of quite differently. I don't know if anyone wants to add in a little bit of extra detail in terms of those of us that have had experiences of internships.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk through this a little bit. So I was lucky enough to go to a university that was really incessant, I suppose, on us doing internships. It annoyed me a lot at university, but looking back on it, I'm glad they hammered home about how important it was to do one. So for my experience, we had a careers site where they would be posting job adverts a lot of the time, and you could also go on there. We had careers advisors we could go and talk to for interview help and CV preparation. For me personally, getting my internship, mine came about through the company coming to my university and doing a talk. I attended the talk hung around afterwards, and it just so happened that the people that were at the talk were the people doing the interview. So obviously by the time it came around to interviewing, when I'd applied for the role, they knew me. So I think I was stood in better stead basically for getting the job. But I appreciate at the moment we can't really do face-to-face talks or anything like that. So I think my advice is just talk to a uni, see what they're offering online, and have a look at job adverts on like Indeed and Glassdoor and lots of other sites. Also, it's also really good to just send off speculative applications. I sent off quite a few in my second year, and I heard back from a few. Some of them also didn't turn into job offers or anything like that, but it's always worthwhile doing because you haven't got anything to lose and you never know what's going to happen.
And that probably answers that next question. Would you recommend contacting companies directly when looking for a job in the industry or to apply to graduate schemes? That speculative applications can and do work. Do any of the other panelists have more that they want to add on that one?
On that one, generally speaking, if you've got particular companies in mind, always check out their website on the careers tab as well. You'll see a whole list of job applications that you can go for, as well as GIS websites as well. I think that's a great place to start looking and see what's out there. But generally, if there is a particular industry you want to get involved in, there's no harm in dropping an email and inquiring about opportunities that are available as well.
Yeah, I think it definitely comes back to what we've touched on a lot in the conversation, those networking opportunities, whether that is face-to-face at university type events, whether that is potentially attending conferences, a little bit sort of like the Esri conference potentially, or whether at the moment it's kind of in online spaces like LinkedIn or on Twitter, just making those connections so that you can kind of ask those questions and you know somebody that can, you know, you can pass that CV or that speculative application onto as well, for sure. Okay, do you find that you need a master's to get your foot in the geospatial career sector? So I don't have a master's in geospatial. My master's is in archaeology. So I would say not particularly for the route that I've taken it. But how did the rest of the panel find that one?
I could take that up. Well, for me, geospatial and GIS is more like a skill, a powerful tool that you work on, but you always need to combine it with your passion or a specialization that you would want to use GIS in. So for me, masters might help you just carry forward and, you know, have that specialization for yourself. That's what I feel.
Okay.
I think I'd agree as well. Like there's no need for a master's. I think at Esri we always have a split. Some individuals do, some don't. I think depending on your experience, you can bring that to the table. But just going back to one of the previous points around soft skills and technical skills, don't underestimate how powerful soft skills can be. Just presenting and being clear and concise. I think that's very highly valued as well, so it doesn't always come down to the degree.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think it's easy for me to say because I went ahead and did a master's and been working ever since, but I think a lot of job descriptions also specified to have a master's, but I think it's probably as important to just go out and seek the skills yourself. Like there's a lot of online resources that you can use, and if they see you've got the drive and the interest, you know, you might be better qualified than someone with a master's in the same you know, job role. So yeah, just keep plugging away.
Okay, so we're going to come back to some of the questions when we've sort of finished our last piece of discussion and reflection amongst the panelists. But I just want to come back for our kind of final bit of discussion, really, thinking about our own experiences. How do we think that we as an industry, we as companies, as schools, as professionals that work in this space, how can we help improve representation in the sector? Because obviously this is kind of a women in geospatial panel that we've got here, but but I think it's fair to say that in certain spaces in the geospatial industry, it's not going to look like this kind of when you walk in through the door. So I'm interested in if the other kind of panelists agree with me on that, if they think there is an issue with representation in the sector and how we can go about fixing that. And I will open it up to Alicia. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, definitely. So I think in terms of representation, I think naturally and gradually through the years, I'd like to think this would increase. And I think that's partially because if we went back 10 years, geospatial and GIS was only something you came across at a degree level. But nowadays, kids are being educated on it at a primary school level and higher. So hopefully over time, there'll be a natural progression. But I know that also through my career, something I always did was go to career fairs or university fairs. So I think in order to get better representation, we need to be out there and representing the different industries that we work in. So just being there, giving talks like this is really beneficial. And hopefully in time, that should help with representation in this area.
Yeah, I really, really agree with that. And I think it's something right from the very start of your career that you can begin to do. You can actually be that role model, that mentor potentially for somebody else out there. Flora, do you want to jump in on this one as well?
Yeah, sure. So for me personally, I've not really, again, I feel like I've had a very clean sweep through my career so far. But my first job was half and half men to women. So we didn't really, it felt just, yeah, it was an equal playing field. And my current role is my whole team is female. So I'm actually like on the other side of things where like we had a lot more men involved, but I don't know if that's just charity sector or that kind of thing. But yeah, as Alicia said, just I guess it's kind of down to us as the minority to go out and remind people that it's not the preconception that a lot of people have of, because I think also GIS is usually quite heavily based in IT and tech, and that is often been seen as a kind of man's world, but it really doesn't have to be. And I actually shared a really amazing article the other day about one of the first people to map the sea floor, who was this really amazing pioneering woman. And there's just lots of little things like that, and you're just like, actually, there's these real gems throughout history who've been paving the way, and we haven't given them the credit that they needed. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and maybe where as a sector we kind of have to step up, and as individuals, those forgotten stories, because actually there are a lot of women throughout the history of GIS that have been working and doing amazing things, and in geography too. And there is this bit of an issue that sometimes they've been erased slightly, and initiatives that help raise awareness of that and help sort of promote the fact that there are sort of historical role models and also lots of existing people in the profession that represent all different sectors of society. Making sure that those stories are told is really quite important. I think anyway that that's something that we can kind of all work on, and something that I think Women in Geospatial as this network is helping to do. I think this ability to tap into this network of speakers across industries, across countries, is really, really helpful for making sure that lots of these different kinds of stories get told. Are there kind of any initiatives in sort of where you're working right now that you're aware of that kind of help with this at all? Is there anything you'd want to flag up to people that are listening here and now?
So we're encouraged, also I started at ACOM on the graduate scheme. Whilst on this, we're encouraged to become a STEM ambassador. I signed up to this and have done quite a few events, sort of going to schools and sort of teaching people about the sort of different career pathways you can go through in STEM. So I think that's definitely within our company one of the main ways that we're sort of maybe not attracting women, but sort of trying to show that it's an avenue that you can sort of go down if you wish.
Absolutely, and we have geomentors that are part of Esri as well, that do a really similar job. And sort of with my education team hat on, I think it's one of the most valuable things that we can do. people sometimes think that geomentors will need to go and be technical advisors for schools, but actually the feedback from teachers and from their students is that it's just incredibly helpful to see people that are in this sector starting their careers and excelling in their careers, because it's an example for their students. You know, most of the time they're sort of sat in a geography classroom, particularly, what can I do with geography? Well, I guess I can be a geography teacher, but actually there's just this vast array of careers that are out there. And if we can kind of talk about those and showcase those, it's super, super helpful. So I definitely echo what Abbie's saying there and encourage people sort of wherever you are in your own career journey right now, even if you are still at university, to get involved with those kind of ambassador schemes, because I think they make a huge difference. Anybody else with any kind of experience around sort of improving representation in the sector that they want to talk about before we move on?
Something I mentioned before, which is Code First Girls.
Go for it, Flora.
Yeah, I don't know if did my audio cut out then?
I can still hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah, so just talking about Code First Girls, which is designed to get more women in tech and more women coding. So definitely worth giving them a look as well.
So Code First Girls, giving that one a try. Okay. Tanya, did you have something you wanted to add as well here?
Yeah, I just wanted to express my gratitude to the Women in Spatial group, because there's no way I would have, found out about this opportunity and connecting with people from UK, sitting in Canada and being from India. So that's one community that really helps bring together people from so many different countries and working towards geospatial. So keep out looking for these kind of portals that they really help you connect. So I've formed so many good professional connections through this group, and I also keep myself aware about opportunities happening at different places.
That's really great to hear. What I would say as well then, in a moment we're going to go back over to the questions, if there's any more that have come through, but it would also be fantastic if people sort of on today's webinar have got any suggestions. So if you're sitting there thinking, I know how we can improve representation in the sector, I've got an idea, then please feel free to share that with us as well. Because I think it's really great to get that feedback from everybody that we've got on the line here today as well. So we're going to head back over to have a look at some more of the questions that have come out of this webinar in just a second. There we go. So what does a typical day or week look like for each of you? Job descriptions can be quite dry. Oh, I think that's quite an interesting question. I'm not sure that I have a typical day or week, so I'm going to throw that one to the panel first. Does anybody want to jump in on a typical day or week, what it looks like?
Yeah, I can go for that one, Casey. So I would probably agree. My days are completely different. They vary day on day, but in the role I'm in, it normally involves having a couple of customer calls. Before the pandemic, it would have been traveling up and down the country to visit them on site, but nowadays it's hopping on a Teams call and talking technically and providing technical advice about how GIS and geospatial can be used to help their problems. I also tend to do some research as well, so looking at new capabilities, catching up on webinars, perhaps writing a paper, or giving talks. So it varies massively, but I think that's what I really enjoy about the job. Every day is completely different.
Me too, I absolutely agree. Other panelists, do you want to jump in? What a typical day or week might look like?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk a bit about this. So working for a consultancy, we also work on loads of different projects with loads of different teams. I'm also based in the environment team, and for GIS, we mainly support those other people in the environment team. So on Monday, I might be working with the acoustics team, helping to work out some building heights for some noise modelling. On Tuesday, I might be out of ecology doing a bat survey, showing them how to use collector on site, and then coming back to the office and drawing that into a map for them. Wednesday I might be helping air quality set up and doing some analysis on roads. And it's basically, for me, every day is completely different. And especially working in a consultancy, you can definitely, to some extent, pick the sort of projects you want to work on, the teams you work with, and you can definitely sort of develop some areas of specialisms. If you work with some teams a lot, they'll always come to you to ask for help and for future projects.
I suspect that all of us will have this this story that there is no typical day or week, and it is a varied sort of job, and that is part of, certainly for me, what attracted me into this space in the first place. And I would suggest as well, if you're at those networking events, whether it's an in-person sort of conference, or whether it's sort of something on LinkedIn or whatever at the moment, then that's you can ask kind of other professionals that are out there what their day is like to find out a little bit more about what was happening there. So we've lost the questions for a moment, but there was one on there that really struck me that I think is worth talking about, and it was, what questions should I prepare for a GIS interview? And see, I'm not sure that there's a sort of list of specific questions that I could give you that would necessarily be that helpful, because of every job interview for different parts of the industry is going to be quite different, and different companies are potentially looking for different things in the people that are coming to work for them there. My approach to this would always be to do your research on the company and the job as much as you can. So talk to those networks that you've managed to develop about the real sort of side of things, read what that job description sort of is asking for really thoroughly, and go on the company website and have a look at that, and make sure that you have an understanding of a little bit of what they do, what they've worked on before. Quite often companies talk about their company ethos and their values these days, so you can get a feel for that as well. And prepare around that would be my advice for this, rather than any specific questions that necessarily need preparing. I don't know if some of the other panelists want to jump in off the back of that, if they've had a similar experience or if theirs has been a little bit different.
Yeah, I think mine is very similar to yours, Katie. I think my advice would be always do your research about the company and know what they do, how they do it, read up on their website. But I would also say as well, like, bring something about you to the table. So it's not just about your job application, it's also about you as a person, what your interests are, what your hobbies are. And I know definitely at Esri, we like to hear about that as well. So it'd be great to hear extracurricular activities as well.
Yeah, I think that's often something people underestimate, but I entirely agree. Certainly the kind of Esri culture is, it's not just about sort of just what you do at the desk. Ultimately, it is about you as a person and your interests, and you know, it helps build a really inclusive and pleasant company culture to be part of, if you're sort of willing and able to share a little bit about yourself like that and bring that kind of into your job role as well. So I definitely second that. I think it's really important, and often something that you tend to overlook when you're early in your career and maybe focused on that technical side of things. But the soft skills and just a bit about yourself is definitely important as well. Anything else in terms of questions for preparing for GIS interviews that any of the other panelists want to jump in on? No? Okay. Some of these we've kind of had a look at before. How do we find GIS roles out there? So I'm aware of the big companies like Esri, but are there specific companies or websites where we can find GIS graduate roles? So I think we've mentioned a couple of these already, but Flora, do you want to jump in with this one?
Yeah, there is a mailing list, literally called GIS jobs, and they send things out on a daily, weekly basis of just kind of, I'm not sure how, I'll see if I can just find an example, but yeah. And yeah, it's just a kind of nationwide mailing list to let you about jobs. And then also for more specific things in certain fields, I looked at environment jobs, and that's where I found my current role.
Yep. I think we've sort of mentioned a little bit already, targeting kind of particular organisations if you know that you're interested in working in their sort of GIS offices. So Esri is obviously one of them, but sort of some of the major engineering companies and other things like that. If they've got a GIS sector, you can go on their websites and find the available vacancies that they've got. I understand that there are different roles in the GIS industry. Could you provide an overview of them, and how did you decide which one to pursue? I don't know if I can provide an overview of all of them because there are so many different roles that are out there. I think that kind of comes back to this idea of networking again, probably, and sort of particularly if you get the chance to attend some in-person or even some of the digital conferences that are being run by the GIS industry at the moment, it'll give you that opportunity to talk to other professionals and hear more about what they do. Does anyone else sort of have any pearls of wisdom on understanding the different roles that are out there?
So obviously I did my placement year for the Ministry of Defence, so working for the government, and I think that was really good for me because it gave me an experience of how the government organisations work and sort of how their deadlines are. And I think that especially made me realise that it was perhaps a bit too easy for me and a bit boring. So that's why I looked online at what jobs were stressful and came across consultancy and decided, yeah, that sounds great, that's going to be for me. And that's pretty much how I decided to change industries, was finding a job that would challenge me a bit more and sort of maybe teach me more, and that's what I went for.
I love that. I really love that. No imposter syndrome. I want to be challenged. I want to, be pushed, and this is the direction that I'm going to go in to get that. I think that's excellent. One other sort of point on that I'd say is, honestly, have a look on YouTube, because of all of the kind of Esri conferences have loads of presentations from the different commercial partners and industries that we work with. And that's not just Esri UK, that's Esri sort of around the world, all of the different distributors that are out there. So you'll get a sense of some of the different roles that are out there and some of the things that people have got to do in those roles. And then hopefully that will sort of, as Abbie was describing there, give you that sense of whether it's something for you or whether actually you need to be challenged even further and that you need to kind of find that next level job out there. What sites do you recommend we look at if we want to assist humanitarian orgs with their mapping needs?
Missing Maps.
Missing Maps, was that Flora?
That's it, yeah. So they have a mapping platform within there called Humanitarian OpenStreetMap. And then within that, there's also an environmental one as well. Yeah, Missing Maps is the one. They also have an app that you can have on your phone, so you can just really quickly just swipe through and help identify land cover.
Fantastic. Any others? Tanya, did you want to add in one there as well?
Yeah, apart from HOT, OSM, we have GIS Corps as well. That is basically for US, but then it gives you a lot of options for mapping volunteering, and we can also register for United Nations volunteering program. And they have some of the projects that need mapping experts. So these are some of the humanitarian orgs that come to my mind.
Awesome, thank you. So we're coming up towards the end of our time, I think, for today's webinar, but I think there's just a few more questions I'd like to see if we can get through. There's one, do you have any recommendations for disabled, specifically I'm autistic people, to make sure we're not overlooked because of our disability? I think this is a really vitally important question, no matter what industry it is that you're looking to break into. For me here, I'd say it's probably looking at that company culture and seeing if there's sort of some evidence there that they're looking to make sure that they're being an inclusive employer. So I know that's something that Esri's worked really hard at, Esri UK, and that's why we have things like sign language on our Scottish conference. So if people are attending that are deaf or hard of hearing there, they had that option to access it that way. So it's probably having a look at sort of what they're saying specifically to make sure that they are kind of an inclusive employer would be one way of going about it. I think also talking sort of to HR as you're making that kind of job application and making sure that any accommodations that you do need are put in place for you as part of that interview process. Do any of the other panelists have more they want to add on that or experience with that? I think this is potentially a really interesting kind of follow-up topic for another webinar series like this, addressing it specifically, because I think it is vitally important that our sector, you know, is representative and that people are not overlooked because of any disability. And I certainly know that sort of awareness of disability, particularly when it comes to things like colour blindness with maps, because people sort of are able to bring their personal experience into the sector around those issues, they make better maps, better outputs as a function, or we make better outputs as a group, essentially, by bringing that experience inside. Okay. I think I'm having internet issues and the sound keeps cutting out. Will a recording of this be available later? Yes, I believe this is being recorded, so it should be available later. And I think that last one, I'm currently in a field that typically does not use GIS. What recommendations do you have when tackling industry barriers to using GIS? Ooh, that's quite a big question. So tackling industry barriers to using GIS. For me, I would say it's generally been about awareness. So it's been making things like story maps to showcase what GIS can really do for people and giving them those little quick wins that make their day job a little bit easier. Anyone else from the panel want to add more in terms of tackling industry barriers to using GIS?
I think using things like OpenStreetMap, which is obviously not OpenStreetMap, QGIS, which is open source, so it's free to download. And then there's loads and loads of open data now available. So if there's a kind of financial barrier, then there are lots of ways to overcome that. And then, yeah, as Katie said, just trying to get your head around the software and see if you can maybe kind of point and case of why you should use GIS in your field.
Awesome. So just to sort of bring us into this final few minutes of the webinar then, the final sort of question on that Slido that went out was what would be useful to prepare yourself for the professional world? And it looks like more specific targeted webinars has definitely been the winner here in terms of how you prepare yourself for interview, CV writing, and things like that. What else have we got here? So for the panelists, apart from today's webinar, have you ever sort of attended anything like that before to help develop your career?
I have, Casey. So I went to a number of career fairs, and there they did CV checks and mock interviews. So it's really worthwhile if there's any running in the future or any virtual events that you can go to where you can get that experience. It's really beneficial.
So keep an eye out for them essentially because they are out there. And in terms of that peer review and coaching, I think I've mentioned a little bit, I sort of use the term mentoring around this, but that's certainly been hugely useful for me, particularly for developing my career as I've kind of moved out of that initial early career stage. In terms of finding those opportunities, for me, that came through networking, I would say, and actually just sort of talking and asking questions. Do any of the other panelists have more that they wanted to say around, you know, how do you get that kind of coaching experience or that peer review? We have touched on it quite a bit in our earlier discussion, but if there's just any quick pointers for people who are looking to find that. So I think it's probably going to be, I think Flora mentioned it when you were talking about kind of coming in with your cohort of people all together, making sure that you talk about sort of your different experiences. And I'd reiterate that, asking questions, you know, and making sure that you build those relationships as you go. So that is bringing us to the end of today's sort of webinar time. So I'd just like to sort of finish up by reminding everybody of Olivia's sort of introduction, where we're talking about getting signed up for Women in Geospatial, so that you'll have access to more of these webinars in the future, and kind of the opportunity to connect with and talk to lots of other people that are working in the geospatial sector. And then I would like to very warmly thank all of today's panelists for their brilliant ideas, their experience, their wisdom. Thank you so much for participating today. It's been incredible to hear from all of you. And I've learned a lot, and I hope that the people here in our webinar have learned plenty too. So thank you very much, guys, for your participation. And I think, as we said, there will be a recording of this available. But otherwise, thank you very much for your time. And it's been a pleasure talking to all of you. Have a really great evening, everybody.